Kona is a first-person shooter game developed in Canada by Parable and published by Ravenscourt. It was released in March of 2017, 1 year after an initial Steam Early Access debut. I played this game on an Xbox One X with a 27-inch 4K HDR monitor. I wore Turtle Beach Stealth 600 headphones and used the standard Xbox One controller for the experience. My system info is down below if you're interested. I have recently switched from recording directly on the Xbox to recording via my PC, and hopefully we'll see higher quality in these videos as a result. Of course, maybe that doesn't matter. After all, I do most of my YouTube viewing on a phone. How about you? Leave a message down in the comments and let me know. My initial thoughts on this game, based on nothing more than the quest in the store page, was that it was going to be similar to The Long Dark, an open-world first-person action-adventure game that's a little bit light on the action. I was basically spot on. This game even has a similar setting, a wintry north basically devoid of other characters. It is not the same game though. This game uses a realistic art style with a muted palette, muted for the most part. There is a specific story arc that uses a little bit brighter color. The graphics on this game feel a little dated to me. The textures don't have a lot of detail and there were jaggies along many of the straight edges in the game. On occasion there were also some odd clipping issues. Reflections were non-existent, and the sky and water effects were passable at best. The graphics aren't this game's selling point though, and those looking for nothing more than high-fidelity experiences should probably move on. The soundscape in this game fares better than the graphics. The soundtrack does a decent job of falling to the background and not getting in the way. It changes, similar to the movie, during some situations and has an overall good feeling for the story and setting. The sound effects all fit the action they match with, but they aren't anything special. Overall, the sound doesn't detract from any immersion you may feel, though it also doesn't compensate for the lack of graphical fidelity. This game currently sells for $15 in the Xbox Store, and as of this recording was down to $12 with Game Pass. There's no DLC listed, and there are no add-ons listed. Speaking of Game Pass, this game's quest was to travel 3 kilometers. It took me about 20 minutes of my standard explore everything style gameplay. A dedicated effort could have gotten that in about half the time pretty easily. I gained no achievements before passing this quest, so this is an achievement safe quest. If you like hearing about Gamepass quests, make sure you subscribe down below. More subscribers helps me get the reviews done even more quickly, giving you more time to decide whether or not you want to go for the quest before it's too late. You play Carl in this game. You are a private detective called into a small town in the far northern reaches of Quebec to help solve a small mystery. I love how this game doesn't start with you doing some big heroic thing, but rather with you being hired to help find a vandal. It's a very ordinary thing for a private investigator to do, and for me anyhow, helps ground the story in a bit of reality. As a character, you have no voice, but rather you get most of your character and story information via the narrator. The narration has a bit of a Stanley Parable feel to it, but it wasn't done quite as well. The story is also delivered via the notes your character takes throughout their journey and the items and documents they find along the way. The story is compelling despite the clunky feel to the narration, and I found myself pushing on for the next one bit of story a couple of times when I should have called it a night. The game isn't that difficult. I feel as if pure persistence in this game will get you through the story even if you can't follow the clues and figure out where to go next. There seems to be minimal combat, and the elemental danger is low enough that you really have only yourself to blame if you succumb to either of these. The controls for this game are basic and familiar for a first-person game. One stick moves and the other looks. One button interacts with the world. Others serve functions such as pulling up the map, journal, inventory, and other similar actions. There are driving sequences where the triggers turn into the gas and brakes. The only downside to learning the controls is that there isn't a controller map visible from within the game. There's some trial and error to it, and that could make it a little more difficult for a casual player to pick up. The gameplay loop here is one of exploration and discovery. There are clues to follow which lead you places. In those places, you investigate everything and gather items as necessary. You'll further the story a little bit, get some more clues, and move on. You'll also backtrack at times. In some locations, there are puzzles to solve, and ultimately there are multiple storylines you are following. While I haven't finished the game yet, I don't see myself coming back to play anytime soon. As with many single-player games, the only reasons to come back include getting all the achievements, something I can live without, any special gameplay modes, and revisiting an old favorite. I haven't seen any hint at all about alternate gameplay modes, and while the story is compelling, it hasn't yet reached that old favorite status. There are a few places I feel this game could have been better. First off is the graphics. It's almost impossible to not compare this game to The Long Dark, as they came out around the same time and have a similar setting. The Long Dark feels more polished graphically though, with more varied textures of a little higher detail and fewer jaggies during gameplay. I'm also going to say that while the narration has some clever lines, the delivery of them felt a little bit off. I stand by my comment earlier that it felt like someone was trying to mimic the Stanley Parable, but it just didn't quite go over as well. Another thing that hampered my enjoyment of this game was loading screens. I understand loading screens. Every game has a loading screen. This game attempts to be an open world game, and sometimes when switching between areas, everything will freeze. This switching between areas isn't always at the actual area switching. Sometimes it's a little bit after you've been told you're into a new area. It's always sudden without warning, and it really feels like you hit a freeze frame in a movie you were watching. There's also a lack of direction in this game, and that bothered me. I get that this is an open world mystery, but it's a mystery, not a straight open world. I shouldn't feel the need to systemically break into every single house in the game to make progress on the story. There should be some reason I'm breaking into the various houses. The controls in this game weren't great. Basic movement and world interaction was fine, but the lack of a controller map in the game settings means I've had to spend a few minutes relearning the controls every single time I play. It was an annoyance, not a major problem, but it was definitely something that could be improved on. If you don't like this review style, drop a comment below and tell me why. I love getting feedback and I'm always striving to make these reviews valuable and better. If you do like the review style, then hit the thumbs up button. It'll help more people see the review and it'll get more like it in your feed over time. I like some things about this game. The soundscape in general was solid. Sure, the effects might not have been anything to write home about, but they were directional and provided solid world feedback while the music stayed out of the way. I also love the story. Any story-driven game is going to be a notch up in my book over one that's not story-driven. This game is a great example of setting a premise that doesn't require too much suspension of disbelief and telling a good story from there. I like that it's open world. An adventure game on rails always ends up feeling like watching a movie or reading a book. It gets harder to immerse yourself in it as opposed to just watching the character go through it. This game definitely does not have that problem. I'm also glad there's not a huge resource management aspect to the game. There's a little bit of resource management, sure, and some games require this as a survival aspect. This game doesn't add that in, and in doing so, it doesn't attempt to be more than it actually is. This game sticks to the story and does it well. Since there isn't a difficulty adjustment, this makes it even more important in my mind that it does stick to the story and do it well and doesn't pull in that whole survival aspect. Ultimately, this is going to allow more people to enjoy the game and enjoy the story. Finally, I enjoy the setting. Some of the setting and story flavor feels like it's introducing me to a culture and a place in the world that I haven't yet experienced. I enjoy new experiences, and I wish I could travel more. So being in an area devoid of America in the game itself is kind of a new experience and is a welcome change. My final verdict on this game is mixed. I say play it while it's on Game Pass. It's not a long game, it's not a huge game. If you fall in love with the story, buy it on its way out of Game Pass so that you can come back to it as an old favorite. If this game wasn't on Game Pass, I'd recommend it, but only when it was on sale for $10 or so. I wouldn't want to pay the full price for it. For me personally, I'm likely to finish the story and uninstall it and probably never return. But we'll see, maybe the story will twist at the end and surprise me. This month is almost over and I have multiple monthly quest reviews to do. Stick around on this channel as I try to whip those out while adding another 2 weekly quest games soon. If you're subscribed and have notifications active, you may even see me go live while recording B-roll and playing the games. Anyone who stumbles on me doing review recording gets to help shape the review for everyone else. Thanks for coming by and I'll see you in the next one.